Hey, I'm James Davey, the exam coach. Thanks for checking into this webinar on how to do your exams the exam coach way. Let's hop right into it. Okay, if you're currently unsure of how to approach your exam revision and exam performance, or you'd like to build a better or more effective way to do it, you're in the right place. In this webinar, I'm going to take you through some of my perspective on exams and some broad approaches you can use to start improving your grades. One thing I want to call out at the beginning is make this webinar count. Take notes so that you can begin doing some of the things we talk about immediately after the webinar. Exams are just like sports. That's how I see them. Think about it. It does make sense. Just like sports, there's a preparation or training stage. That's when we study or do the revision. There's a game day. That's the exam itself. That's when we perform under a pressurized situation. And then there's the post-game stage or the post-match analysis stage where we do the exam and then we think about it. We think about what went well, what didn't go so well, and how we can change our performance and learn from what we've done for the next time. And just like every coach in every sport has their own playing style, philosophy, methods, and tactics, I have my own style to do exams. And it's based on this framework you can see on your screen right now. Foundation, understanding, and nailing it. The foundation piece is the most important. It's the planning, the strategy, the mindset, and also looking at all the other things that people really don't think have an impact on exams, but do. So for example, things like your social relationships, your relationships with your teachers and your parents at home. Also, the relationship you have with your smartphone and technology, because even though it's perhaps not directly related to the information you're trying to learn for your exam, it's definitely related to your time, your daily routine, and what you're thinking about on a day-to-day basis. The next stage of the framework is understanding, and this is the obvious one. It's the work, it's the learning of the material you need to know for your exam, and the memorization of that material. And just to point out, people who say exams aren't useful because you never need to know the information that you're learning for your exams in 10 years' time, or you don't really need a good memory because there's Google and Google has everything. Well, what I'd say to that is my experience in the workplace and my experience of working with other people has told me that if you can learn new things very quickly, if you can train yourself to do that, and exams are a great starting point to pick up the key skills in order to be able to learn things quickly and adapt, you can then apply that to anything you want to do in later life. And that's a huge skill. Also, having a great memory and being able to recall certain things off the cuff, out of thin air, is really important, because being able to do it spontaneously in the moment, in a big business meeting, on a stage, performing in front of a load of people, or even when you're in a job as simple as waiting tables, which is what a lot of people do as perhaps their first job, and I've done it, being able to recall things that people have told you is valuable. For example, I always remember getting more tips when I was able to tell everybody on the table or repeat back to them what they ordered, and also remember that so when I bring the food to the table, I don't have to ask who ordered what. I just give them their food. So remember here, you're learning skills that are going to be useful for any career you decide to go into. And finally, the nailing it stage. This is performing under pressurized exam conditions and delivering what you know within the allotted time available. And again, this is applicable to what we need to do in later life. Whatever you go into, there's going to be an element of pressure, an element of you need to be able to deliver certain things on time. You need to be able to process your thoughts and communicate them to other people within a certain amount of time. Because that's really how our society works. People go to work, they produce work under time conditions, and there is an element of pressure in that. And we just need to get really good at handling it and being able to operate with some perspective in order to think clearly under pressure. Before we go into the full presentation, I wanted to make you aware of one of my key philosophies, and this is doing beats knowing. I've done this a little while now, and I've been to a lot of schools, which you can see on your screen, and I've given a lot of talks. And the overriding thing that happens each time I do one of these is, on the day, there will be a lot of good intent, a lot of understanding, a lot of motivation. But after the day has passed, we all know we get distracted. We have other priorities. And the things we said we were going to do, we don't do. We know what they are, but we don't do them. And the really important thing you need to understand about any good element of exam preparation and performance is that it's about consistently doing the right things over an extended period of time. And this isn't based on intelligence, how smart you may think you are, or how disciplined you may think you are. It's really based on setting up a system and a framework that works for you, so doing the right thing every day actually becomes pretty easy. In fact, it just becomes part of the way you do things. So I had a think, and I built a solution for this problem. How do you get students to understand what they need to do for their exams, but then most importantly, do those things consistently all the way up to exam day, throughout exam season, and then finish strong at the end, taking them all the way through that process that is a very challenging one, and it can cause a lot of stress to a lot of students. So you can see on your screen now the web page for the 7-day exam plan, and I'd encourage you to go and check this out. See how it's helped other students, what they've thought of it, how they've used it, what it includes, and how it can help you. And you can also check out other things on there, such as my experience of school, my own grades and reports, the good and the bad, and go and take a look, because on the website there's some really helpful resources there for you. To break it down some more, the 7-day exam plan is designed to solve 3 big problems that every student faces. The first is getting you the best information on how to do your exams, how to study and revise for them, that is, and how to perform well in them. There's so much information out there today. There's so many different ways of doing things. One thing we found is a lot of students have so many decisions to make, they can't actually make one. They don't know how to make a revision timetable that's effective, how to use the most effective revision techniques, how to prepare properly for each exam. And what the 7-day exam plan has done is it's condensed and consolidated a lot of information into easily digestible information that's about 45 minutes long each day. It's a combination of audio, video, and written content that you can consume over the course of 7 days. And by the end of 7 days, you will have the blueprint on what exactly you need to do in order to be able to perform your best for your exams, all the way from just getting some motivation to get down and do a revision session to staying calm and calculated during the exam situation itself. The next thing that occurred to us was the role of the smartphone. This is so important because the smartphone can quite literally make or break your exam results this year. And I'm sure you're nodding now because everybody has one. They're so useful, yet they can be so distracting and so difficult and quite addictive, in fact, to get away from. The key thing you need to do during exam season is change and adapt the way you use it to serve your exam preparation and your exam performance. And the 7-day exam plan gives you ideas and ways to do this. It gives you ways to control your usage of social media, to make sure that the things you're consuming on your smartphone every day, number one, motivate you and push you forward and keep you positive, and number two, actually support the revision process, support the consolidation of information into your long-term memory so that you can then go into the exam, deliver what you know, and the smartphone's actually assisted you in doing that, rather than, which most students struggle with, caused a large amount of distraction and a large amount of lost time when we need to really be prioritizing the exam revision process over all the other things we can do on our smartphone, which, yeah, they're fun, they're enjoyable, and it helps us feel connected. But really, during the months leading up to your exams, you need to be focused about how you're using this device. And the other thing about the 7-day exam plan is it can all be done over your smartphone. It's very simple and easy to use. And lastly, the consistency piece. How do you keep students consistent? How, after they've done the plan, do you make sure they're doing the right thing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis all the way through exam season, not just those initial 7 days? How do you keep that consistency and momentum up? Well, the way we do this is through WhatsApp. WhatsApp is one of the most downloaded apps in the world. In fact, the majority of people will have that app on their phone, and maybe you do too. In fact, it's likely you do. So with every 7-day exam plan, we offer follow-up WhatsApp support, and you're added to our WhatsApp mailing list. You get very regular, almost daily support with your exams. You can ask questions, and it really helps just sustain that momentum to act as your online virtual exam coach that you can go to when you have an issue about your preparation process or nerves before an exam. Along with the information you've already used in the 7-day exam plan, we can give you additional tips and pointers bespoke to your situation and what you're currently struggling with. And we found that this really helps students follow through and keep up that momentum that's so crucial, both just after you finish the 7-day exam plan and all the way up to the very last couple of exams you're about to take this year. One more thing you should know about is the 14-day guarantee on the 7-day exam plan. Like you, we're results focused. After 14 days, if you don't think the 7-day exam plan and continued support and advice on WhatsApp is going to help you achieve your exam goals, you can just return it for a full refund. So one thing you should absolutely do at the end of this webinar is go and check out the 7-day exam plan. Give it a try. That way, you're at least going to get 14 days of really solid exam preparation done. The last thing you want to do is, after having watched the webinar and found out about the 7-day exam plan, is not take any positive steps to put yourself in a position to succeed in your exams. Don't be one of those students, and I tell you this, there will be loads of them, who come to me halfway through exams because there's very little anyone can do to help at that stage. Exams are all about planning ahead and working consistently over an extended period of time up to and throughout exam season. So if you have any questions, I'll share some contact details at the end of this webinar that you can use to get in touch. I wonder if school or exams has ever felt a bit like this for you. It's a bit of a battle. You pick up your pen, metaphorically speaking, perhaps that's your sword, and your folders are your shield, and you just try and make a bit of progress each day. Some days you do, some days you don't. But during this presentation, what we're going to do is this. We're going to stop. We're going to step back, think for a bit, organize ourselves, and then proceed. We're going to re-enter the battle situation, having actually looked at things a bit and thought, okay, what is the best way to do this? Can we find a way of winning the battle and long-term winning the war? And it's important that you understand exams open doors of opportunity. That's what they do. They are not the be-all and end-all. But what they do is they keep your opportunities open. If you don't get a certain set of results this year, it's no biggie. But what it does do is it closes a few doors of opportunity, and you just have to find more doors. That's all you need to do. But the plus side of doing good in your exams is that those doors, all of them, are left wide open for you to walk through. A question I'd like to ask you is, do you think you have a good memory? Because within this webinar, we're going to have to remember certain things. in order to keep these doors of opportunity open to us. Okay, I'll take your silence as a maybe. Let me ask you this. Do you think you have a good imagination? Now that always gets people. There's always a little conversation in everyone's head where they actually say, you know what? I do have a decent imagination. It's probably a little bit better than my memory, actually. So let's work with that. Let's use that imagination to our advantage to keep those doors of opportunity open. Back to this framework. I'm about to take you through some of the key points within the foundation aspect. For this, I need you to close your eyes and just listen to my voice. Allow your mind to go blank and imagine yourself in a blank landscape wearing exactly what you're wearing right now. Far in the distance, you see a tiny black speck. You run towards this black speck as fast as you can. Upon drawing nearer, you realize that it is in fact a ginormous human eye. It's about 50 feet high and 50 feet across. As you stare into the center of that eye, you can see something. And what you can see is a chessboard. On that chessboard, you can see yourself standing there with two other groups of people. Those groups are your friends from school and your subject teachers from school. You notice something else. You notice that everyone is holding a copy of a newspaper. And that newspaper is the London Evening Standard. It's the newspaper that's published every day in London, in the UK. And you look down to see what the headline article is on this newspaper, and you realise that there's in fact an image of your brain on the front cover of the newspaper. Yep, an image of your brain. This is a crazy imaginary world that we're in, and you identify it as your brain. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go through that little story one more time, very quickly. Keep those eyes closed, no peeking. And as I get to each of the key stages in the story, I'm going to pause, give you a little cue. You can say it out loud, I'll say it with you, and we'll just go through it together. See if we can remember it. You now see yourself in a blank landscape wearing exactly what you are wearing today. Far in the distance, you see a tiny black speck. You run towards this black speck as fast as you can. Upon drawing nearer, you realize that it is in fact, say it together, it's a ginormous human eye. As you stare into the center of this eye, you can see something. And what you can see is a, say it together, chessboard. On that chessboard, you can see two groups of people. The first are, who is it? It's your friends from school. That's right. The second group of people are who? Your subject teachers from your school. And you notice something else. You notice that everyone is holding a copy of a newspaper. What is the name of that newspaper? Say it out loud. It's the London Evening Standard. That's correct. And as you look down to see what is on the front cover of the newspaper, you can see something else. What can you see? Yeah, well done. Just heard you say it. It's an image of your brain. That's right. It's a crazy imaginary world we're in. It's your brain. Okay. 3, 2, 1. You can open your eyes. Results day. Whatever this is for you, it's going to go one of two ways. Here's the first way. You get up nice and early because you're pumped. You know you left everything out there. You did the best you could. You tried your hardest throughout the majority of your revision sessions and within every exam. You didn't leave an exam early. You kept as focused as you could. And you gave it your all. And you know what? You get up early that day and you're not surprised. Your results are good. They're decent. You got what you needed. It's a cracking day. You go out, you have a decent time, onwards and upwards. The doors of opportunity are kept wide open and you're ready to walk through them. The second way this day could go is like this, though. You don't get up early because you know deep down you didn't try your best. You quit too early. You didn't get focused when you knew you had to. You allowed yourself to be distracted. You took the easy path. You left the exam early. You were unfocused during each of your exams. You let people go into the loo or looking at the clock too much or looking at what everybody else was doing in the exam get to your head. And you're a bit nervous because you don't expect good results. And you open up that results card or you go on the internet to go to the relevant website for your results, and you're not surprised you haven't done well. You haven't got what you needed. The doors of opportunity have closed. And you just wish you'd taken a bit more of the initiative to get this exam thing sorted so that you could get through and get to the next stage of what you really wanted to do and achieve and try in your life. So, let's stop all the doom and gloom. Let's think about how we can make situation 1 happen as much as possible this exam season. Remember, take note, get this down. I'm about to go into the key elements of the foundation that you need to know. The first thing you need to do is you need to visualize. You need to have a clear vision for your exams. What results do you actually want? I ask a lot of students, so, what do you want to get in your exams? And they just say to me, I want to get good results. And I say, okay, what are good results? And they say, well, I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. And there's one of the problems. You need to be clear about what you want from yourself this year. Because if you're not clear about it, how can you possibly aim for it and hit it? The first stage is to decide exactly what you want to get. Write it down. Be clear. Be decisive. And be ambitious. Here's a little model you can use to set yourself a good goal to shoot for this exam season. Use the 3 Ps. Make it present, positive, and personal. This is a statement about what grades you want. So it could be, let's take some generic grades. It could be, I have 3 A's. And it feels cracking. That's present, positive, and personal. I have 7 8 grades and 3 9 grades. It's superb. That's present, positive, and personal. Just write it down. Get it down somewhere. Is it on a sticky note? Is it in a book? Is it on your phone? Is it the screensaver to your phone? Now that would be a big play. But get this statement down. It's important. So, you know what to aim at? But now you got to be strategic. You got to find out the best way of hitting that target. One of the best ways to do this is to figure out what your success and failure strategies are and make them very clear to yourself. We all have success and failure strategies, and I'm going to talk you through a couple of examples now. So when I was at school, and you'll see this if you go and watch the video on my grades and reports, between the age of about 13 to 16, I was very distracted. I was a bit of a class clown kind of figure, liked getting a lot of attention, playing the fool, getting kicked out, and I channeled a lot of my energy into sports rather than studying. And I found that when it came to exam time, I needed to figure out how I could be successful in the classroom. And one of the ways I did that, one of the thinking or thought processes I used, was to look at my sports and what exactly was going on there. So when I was playing sport, and any of you have played sport, if you're listening to this now, will know that when you play sport, you need to be engaged. You need to concentrate on what's going on in front of you. You don't really have time to think about anything else, because if you're not engaged, 2 things are going to happen. 1, you're going to lose. No one wants to lose. Or 2, you're going to get hurt. Some sports are dangerous. You know, there's balls flying around everywhere, sticks, people. You're going to get hurt if you're not focused and not engaged. So I identified that behavior of engagement, and thought, okay, that's exactly what I'm doing there to be successful in my sport, to enjoy it. How do I transfer that to my studies? Well, one thing I started doing was looking at everything that I knew to cause disengagement. I began to associate that with failure. Anything that disengaged me, anything that distracted me. And because I made that distinction very clear, I began to be able to do those things better. So for example, when I saw the little red notification icon pop up on any app on my phone, I associated that directly with failure. If I click on that notification, I am buying into things that make me fail. If I don't click on it, I am buying into a strategy that I know makes me succeed, being engaged, being in the moment with something and getting it done. That initial thought process allowed me to start making the tiny baby steps to becoming way more focused on my studies and what I really needed to focus on during exam season by just looking at what I was good at already. So that's just an example. Think about what's good in your life at the moment. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? It could be anything. It could even be how good you are at texting people. What behaviors are you exhibiting there? And how can you look at those behaviors and think, okay, what does that look like in a study-related context? What do I need to do to make that happen? Here's another example for you. I wonder if anybody listening to this has ever done a performance in front of a group of people. Could be drama, singing, music, entertainment, anything. But essentially being in front of a group of people and had to deliver something because they had an expectation. And you'll know that whenever you're doing that, it could even be reading to the class, by the way. You'll know that whenever you're doing that, you feel a little bit of pressure, right? You feel like, wow, I've got to do something here. I've got to deliver. They're expecting something from me. Now imagine if you could take that strategy of pressure and expectation and apply that to your homework. When I did my homework, I used to just guess answers sometimes. You know, there would be a maths question and I'd say, hey, if I just put a random number here, probably going to get it wrong, but could get it right. And then that would be that. Imagine if you had that audience watching you do your homework each night. That audience that you were performing in front of that expected you to deliver something. Imagine if you were guessing answers. I don't think they'd be very happy. They'd probably start booing. It's a great strategy you can use to trick your mind into thinking, hey, this is a bigger thing than just me and the paper. I've got an audience here. I've got to deliver. I've got to step up. So again, think about what you're good at, how your brain works in certain situations where you are a bit more successful, and create little tricks and hacks to make yourself buy into the success strategy that you know works and move away from anything that you've identified as making you fail, which is often the direct opposite to what makes you succeed. Next up, an important equation for you. Potential minus interference equals performance. This is just an important one to bear in mind. At the moment, you've got a load of potential. You've got loads of it. You've got your whole life ahead of you. But there's a hell of a lot of interference to go along with that. Smartphones, entertainment, socializing, all those things that are important, but during certain times in the year, their importance increases and decreases. During exam season, the importance of recognizing your potential goes up. And all those things, the bucket of interference expands as well. And you've got to control that. You've got to keep it small so that your performance is as maximized as it can be. Relationships, the next thing we have to think about in our foundation to exam success. The first one is the one with yourself. Are you currently performing at the level you know you can? And this is a huge question, and it's only one that you know the answer to. You've got to make the decision. Are you trying your hardest? Are you doing your best? Are you putting it all out there? And it's a simple yes or no. You may be having that conversation with yourself right now. The next one is the relationship with your friends. Are your friends being positive around you? Are they supporting you? Do you have a group of friends that do that? Have you got that supportive friend group? If not, can you find one? Can you create certain relationships in real life to help you with your studies? Can you make a couple of new friends and perhaps during exam season, just spend a little less time with your friends that you like going out with, or your friends that you play footy with, or netball with? Whoever it is, make those decisions. Think about it. It's important. Because we all know that our social life doesn't just stop during exam season. Yeah, we keep doing things, but we just need to taper it down a little bit to control it a bit more so that we have more time to invest into the long-term future, which is based on keeping the doors of opportunity open, and part of that is getting good exam results. And finally, the relationship with your subject teachers. Let me ask you this. When I was at school, I used to put my hand up in class, ask a question. If you were lucky, in fact, I didn't even ask that many questions because I was usually a bit embarrassed about looking dumb or looking too keen. That's a whole nother thing we'll get onto, but for now, let's just focus on this. The teacher would answer my question, and I wouldn't have understood what the teacher just said, but I'd say I had. And I know you're probably laughing now because you've done it too. Everyone's done it. It's because we don't want to look dumb, stupid, slow, whatever negative word you want to use for it. But you've got to really think about, okay, am I willing to take that perceived embarrassment? And that's all it is perceived embarrassment of maybe looking a bit silly in order to actually get to the bottom of what I need to know and be able to deliver that in the exam, because that's what matters. That's what dictates the doors of opportunity being kept open, not whether you feel a little bit embarrassed. And trust me, you do this a few times, you make that shift in standards of being able to admit when you're wrong in front of people and build up your knowledge and take the opportunity of having a teacher who can answer your question and being honest, you're going to start building very, very quickly towards a successful exam performance. So think about that. Those 3 types of relationships we just went through. Do you need to work on any of them? Is there one in particular you need to focus on? I think the teacher one's a really big thing. Trying to get the most value out of them. Paying attention in class, asking the right questions, being positive, being engaged, and realizing how other people can help you achieve your exam goals. So as I said, write one down. Which one are you going to focus on in particular? Remember, the most important thing after you've watched this is to actually do things. Standards. Standards are really important because they dictate our day-to-day behaviors. And it's really about turning what we know we should do. I know you know what you need to do for your exams. You know it requires a lot of hard work. You know it requires consistency. You know you need to get a certain amount of syllabus coverage done per day leading up to your exams. You know that. The difficult thing is doing it every day, right? And this is where your standards come in. Standards make us think, okay, I know I should do that. How do I make it a must? Well, one of the best ways I've found is writing down a statement that you can see regularly every day that sums up your approach, that sums up your philosophy, your motto, how you do things. And here's 3 statements you could use to, and you can change them a bit if you want to, but you can use them, 1 of them, 2 of them, however many of them you want to use, in order to help you have that high standard every day. And let me read them out to you. Because I value the future, I don't want to think about what I'm capable of, I want to do it. That's a big one. Because I know I can do well in my academic studies whilst also socializing, participating in extracurricular activities, and having fun. I can do it all. This is a huge one. It's something that I thought wasn't possible until I actually applied myself and I realized, yeah, I can do that. I can have a bit of everything. I don't have to have these huge ups and huge downs. I can have some big ups, some big downs, and a lot in the middle as well while I'm feeling pretty good. Number 3, because I value improvement. I always try my best, and as long as I do this, I can be happy with my results. another biggie. It's about just leaving it all out there. If you know you've tried your best deep down, you can never be disappointed. And finally, mindset. The way you think about yourself and your exams is so important to teeing up a solid foundation for you to work off of. And there's 3 key mindsets I want you to write down and know about. Number 1, what to focus on, what things mean, and what to do. Whatever happens to you during this exam period that you might be going through now, you can always choose what to focus on. You can always choose what things mean, and you can always choose what you're going to do about it. Think about those 3 mini statements there. Mindset 2, focus on what you can control rather than on what you can't control. Let me tell you this year, during exams, there is going to be a really tough paper. It's going to be tougher than any paper that you've ever sat before, that anyone else has ever sat before. It's going to be a real rotten one. And a lot of people are going to complain. They're going to come out of the exam and be like, hey, that was ridiculous. It was harder than any of the past papers. There were some questions I couldn't even answer. The one thing you have to remember all the time is the only thing you can control is your performance in the exam room. When you're with that paper for maybe 1-2 hours, however long you've got, you just need to focus on what you can control. That is your performance. Don't think about how hard the paper is. Just execute the best you can and get out of there. No complaining, and just keep moving forward. That's the kind of attitude that will get you a great result in the face of a really tough paper. Mindset 3, see things as they are, but not worse than they are. Be honest with yourself now. If you're not up to standards, if you're below par, if you're not putting in the effort that you know you can, you have to realize that. The next thing is, though, you don't want to see things as so bad that it discourages you from even trying. Because let me tell you this, you can always build. You can always get better. You can always improve. As long as you have time, you can make a difference. And it's just little by little every day. Now, let's review something. What was that weird story that I went through with you a few moments ago, and how does it all fit together? Well, when you see yourself in that blank landscape and that tiny black speck in the distance is there and you run towards it as fast as you can, and as you draw nearer, you realize it's in fact a ginormous human eye, you're going to think, do I have my vision down? Do I have it clear? Do I know what I want to get from my exams? The next thing is, when you see that chessboard in the middle of the eye, you're going to think, do I know my strategies? Do I know my success and failure strategies? Am I thinking about them? And am I making sure that my day-to-day behavior is aligned with what makes me succeed? The next thing is your relationships. The people you see on that chessboard, your friends and your subject teachers, you need to be thinking about them. How can you use your friends to support you a bit more in your exams? Could you test each other? How can you set new standards with your teachers so that you actually use them as a valuable support mechanism to take you closer to your exam goals? And finally, the relationship with yourself. Are you performing to the level that you know you can? Or are you falling short? And you've got to make your decisions off the back of that. The next thing, when you see the copy of the newspaper in everybody's hand, you know that it's the London Evening Standard, and that means, what are your standards? Have you got those statements written down where you can see them often, and are you doing your best every day to commit to them and meet them? Any of you who've been to London will know this, is that it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to do this, guys. It's totally free. The other thing is, it's published every day. If you go outside any London tube station, the other thing is, it's published every day. If you go outside any London tube station, no matter what day of the year, the London Evening Standard is there. That's how your standards have got to be. They're just there. They exist. It's part of who you are. It's your approach. And finally, as you look down to see what's on the front cover of that newspaper, you can see an image of your brain. And that reminds you of the 3 key mindsets you need to be paying attention to this year. So that's the story right there. It's in your brain now. It's a cool, imaginary little story that you can use to think, okay, do I have my foundation to exam success laid out? Am I clear with it? Do I know what I'm doing? And from there, you can build. Back to that framework. Let's look at the understanding phase of the framework. The first thing you need to do is you need to use the map. Is there a map to show you the way to exam success? Yes, there is. It's called the syllabus and the specification. Each of your subjects will have that. In fact, every subject has to, because teachers need to know what to teach you. You just need to get your hands on it, because it shows you everything that could possibly come up in the exam. All the different topics, all the different sections. You need to have your map. You need to know where you're going, where you are in the syllabus. What are the key topics? What are the subtopics? That's the first step. Get that for each of your subjects. If you don't have that, there's no way you can find your way to your exam goals. The next thing is a really basic revision technique I'm going to give you. It's called the 3-sheet technique. And it's actually one that I've used throughout my whole time in education. And really, the first time I came across it was I had a great history teacher when I was at school. He went to, he's Oxford educated, very, very smart guy. And I just didn't really know how to revise for any of my subjects. And I just said, look, do you have a technique that is just basic, but just works, and I can do it for everything? And he just got 3 sheets of paper, and he just said, do this. He took one A4 sheet of paper, and he said, just write bullet-pointed notes from a revision guide or a textbook about a relevant topic that comes up on the syllabus on this A4 sheet. Break it down as much as you can, make it nice and clear, keep the detail in there, and hit the key points that are indicated by the revision guide, the textbook, and the syllabus. The next thing you want to do is get rid of the revision guide and the syllabus and any textbooks, and just have that sheet of A4 paper in front of you, and take another sheet of A4 paper, but fold it in half. So you've now got 2 sheets. You've got one sheet of A4 paper with a whole load of notes on it, and then you've got a blank sheet of half A4 paper. And on that half sheet of A4 paper, you want to look through your notes and you want to think, okay, what are the key points within those notes that I've just taken? Can I condense it at all? Can I shrink it down a bit so that, think about it, it becomes a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to remember and recall, a little bit easier to digest? Write them out. Write those notes out. And then you want to take one final sheet of paper, which can be a flashcard. A flashcard, if you don't know, is just one of those small pieces of card you often see at school that might have a couple of bullet points on it, or a question on the front and an answer on the back. And you want to create bullet-pointed flashcards about each of the key points you identified on your half A4 sheet of paper. So it could be, as I just said, a question on the front and an answer on the back, which is one of the bullet points that you wrote down. Or it could be 3 bullet points that are just clearly labeled and written down, maybe in different colors to easily distinguish them from each other. And that would be another flashcard. So then you'd have maybe 5, 6, 7, however big your notes are, flashcards at the end. But essentially, you've got 3 different sizes of paper there. And that's a great way of revising, because what you're doing is you're taking complicated information and you're distilling it down into smaller chunks of information. But then most importantly, what you're doing is you're using the flashcards to test your recall. And this is crucial that you understand this. And I'm going to go into this a bit more after. But testing yourself, actively asking yourself, do you know this? Ask yourself a question, see if you can recall the answer. Don't just passively read through notes. And the 3-sheet technique really helps you break things down a little further in order to think about, okay, do I actually know this information? Am I able to recall it? You get a bit more specific rather than just rewriting reams and reams and reams of notes and rereading them and then highlighting them and then drawing bubbles around them and all those different things that people tend to do. Test yourself on them. Put the 3 sheets of paper away and think, okay, can I actually remember anything that I just wrote down? Then perhaps pick up a flashcard and say, oh yeah, I remember that one point. Could I add a bit more detail to that? Look at the first sheet of A4 paper. Take a look, put it to one side, see if you can recall that. Maybe write it out on a flashcard again. It's that element of rinsing and repeating, repetitive testing, that's really going to help. And I'll go into a bit more detail now. This idea of testing yourself is called active recall. That's the fancy name for it within the study community, I suppose you can call it. And for me, the professor that's really brought this technique into focus is a guy called Professor Dunlosky. He performed an experiment to find out what is the best way for people to recall information they've just learned about. What's the best technique for them to use? And he took a group of people and exposed them to different learning methods. And these ranged from reading text several times, reading text and then writing notes on that text, highlighting the text, and another final method he used was reading the text once and then giving that person a quick test on it to see if they remembered anything. And the way this experiment turned out, the key thing you need to know is out of all the different techniques, highlighting, reading and taking notes, reading several times, reading once, and getting a quick test on it, the technique that worked best for recall when people were tested on that information a week later was the technique that involved reading the text once and giving yourself a short test immediately afterwards. And this actually helped to consolidate the information within people's brains so that they were more likely to be able to recall it a week later. Whereas the other techniques were a little less effective in this. And an important thing to remember from this is this doesn't mean you can just read all of your text once, give yourself a quick test, even if you don't get any of the answers right, and you'll be able to remember it. Nor does it mean if you read something once, give yourself a quick test, get everything right, that you're going to be able to remember it in a week or 2 weeks' time. That's not how our memories work. Our memories work more like this. This is how we remember and forget information. If you take the point at which information is first learned or read, we forget that information very quickly. So what we need to do is very soon after having read that information, we need to give ourselves a quick test so that we start to actively try and dredge up some of the information from our brain. And through doing this, through just having been about to forget the information to then recalling it again, the neural connections that allow us to bring back up that memory become strengthened. And you can see this in the graph through the lines becoming shallower, so that is less steep, as we review information more. We retain information the more we repeat it, the more we test ourselves on it. And an important thing to note is you don't have to test yourself on it every day in order to be able to remember it. Yeah, at the beginning, you want to make those repetitions fairly regular. But as you begin to remember more and more of the information, it's going to become more and more consolidated in your memory, and you can begin to just space out the time between your repetitions. So you just give yourself a little top up, and then you can fit in more time for other things you don't know and repeat the same process. And finally, the nailing it phase, the final part of the framework, and this is where pressure can sometimes get the better of students. The way you need to think about exam day is it's just like a sports match. You have to do your warm-up, your preparation, and it looks similar every single time. Okay, you adjust a little bit to the team you're playing. That's the specific exam you're taking. But really, the routine is the same. You have that consistency of what you do before bed, how long you sleep for, what time you get up in the morning, the prep before the exam, what you do in terms of the revision techniques you use and what you read through and what you focus on in terms of your exam approach, what questions you're going to do, when you're going to be at certain stages in the paper, what you're going to look at during an exam, what you're going to focus on, all those things, having it clear, and then after the exam, very quickly being able to forget that performance because it's irrelevant. It does not matter if you did well, if you did terribly. Only the examiner knows that, and whatever the outcome, it doesn't matter because it's very rapidly gone from being the most important thing you do that day to the least important thing in your life because you just need to focus on the next game. Remember, exams are just like game day. You have to have a clear routine and set way of doing things. And you can figure this out for yourself. Within the 7-day exam plan, I lay out what I think and what other students have found to be the most effective ways of preparing before an exam, what you do during an exam, and how you think after the exam, along with some techniques to actually get you to move on from it and focus on what's important, which is the next exam and the next phase of preparation. Okay, that's it for this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it and took some value from it. Remember, the most important thing you need to do is take some positive action, whether that is getting on the 7-day exam plan and committing to really honing and refining those key techniques that are going to get you the results you need and having that system in place along with the long-term WhatsApp support, or if it's just taking a few simple steps off the back of this webinar. You can get in contact with the team via the email address on screen. That is teamkeen@theexamcoach.tv. And thanks for watching.